Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready to take a bite out of the competition? Are you looking for ideas to make your business better? Welcome to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet,
sponsored by Apple Capital Group.
At the core of every successful business, you'll find people making a difference. And with each episode of the Core Business Show, we talk with those people, examine those ideas, and explore the strategies that make them special. Now, the host of the Core Business Show, Tim Jacquet.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet, your host. Today, I have the pleasure of having Katrina Radke. She is an Olympic gold medalist, 4-time, and we're going to talk about her career and talk about also her book. If you have any questions, I invite you to go ahead and put a question in the chat room. I'm going to read it on the air. We probably will take some questions probably halfway into the hour and with a commercial break. Katrina, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Tim.
I guess to begin with, kind of tell us about yourself. Like I was saying earlier, our viewers, listeners like to hear a kind of personal story of how you actually came to be.
Yes, well, it's funny, Tim. I actually grew up in a small farming town in Morris, Minnesota, and I had two older brothers who were swimming, and I just wanted to be anywhere that they were. And so basically, finally my parents said, hey, what? I'm going to let you go to the pool with them, even though I couldn't really swim yet. And when I first started, I used to hold on to the side of the wall because I was afraid to go to the deep end because I was afraid there might be some animals or sharks or something down there. So I learned to basically follow along wherever they were going. And from a very young age, I just loved being in the water. I had done various many different sports, but swimming was the thing I just felt so at home. I loved being in the water, and I let the water just sort of carry me through. Some days are great. Some days as we go through life, obviously, we also have our down days. And so just being in the water was like my sanctuary. So during that time, growing up, I actually also had a teacher, like around third grade, who had us do this assignment that said, when I am 25, and we had to finish it. And I wrote something like, when I'm 25, I will be an Olympic swimmer and then win many medals in swimming, get a boyfriend, coach for a couple of years, and then get married. And so, ironically, I had big dreams as a young kid, but I was also naive. I had no idea what the path would be and how difficult and fun at the same time reaching a lofty goal like that can be in someone's life. So for me, I think like any of us out there is realizing that, hey, I have a dream just like anybody else. And I started realizing as time went on that we all can do these things. It's just a matter of making a commitment to it.
Wow. So when you were competing, not really competing, but, you want to be what your brothers are doing, you finally convinced mom and dad for you to go. Did they realize that what you will achieve?
Well, yes. The good thing about my parents, one of the amazing things about them is they never squashed my dreams. And they never told me I was crazy. They never said to me, oh, you can't do that, or you're not good enough. They just said, okay. And so my dad and I actually, when I was very young, set up these goals where I'd make like 50 cents for this or $1 for that, and then $5 and $10. And of course, back then, 20 years ago, that was a big deal. And there was no cell phones, and there was none of these extra texting and machines that we get to use now. But it's funny because I think he just sort of kept dangling that carrot far out there, and I got excited by it. And so I just thought, okay, let's just take the first step and see if I can get my state championship time standard. Okay, let's see if I can win state championships. Now let's see. And then they had national age group rankings, and I wanted to be able to see if I could actually get ranked. And I think one beautiful thing about growing up where I did is that I didn't know any different. We used to have the newspaper guy come to the school and take pictures of our art projects and put them in the newspaper. And just being able to know that we were all one big community and knowing that we're supported and loved, I think it made a huge difference in my confidence in terms of who I was and what I was able to do in my life. And I think that carried me through because I think it's easy to get lost along the way. And for me, I was able to feel really supported.
Well, when they give you all the support, you're coming from a small town, did they have a lot of programs that can nurture you? And I know every parent looks at, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put her in gymnastics or swim class. In order for you to compete nationally, did they have a program or did you guys relocate? How did you actually train for?
Yes, very good question. And ironically, my dad was a scientist, and we actually ended up going on sabbatical. He was on sabbatical for a year when I was about 10, and we moved to Australia. And during that time, so my hometown, we had this beautiful 25-yard, 8-lane pool with underwater windows, and I remember going underneath and looking. You could look underneath, and we had this beautiful diving well. And but no, we did not have some national training program that was developing athletes to be Olympians by any means. We were there to have fun and have as train, but it was basically like any kid who grows up, you tried out different sports or tried out what you like to do. And for me, that's what I love to do. And so I never even thought about, I had no idea what it would take. And so when we moved to Australia when I was 10, ironically, where we moved, the coach happened to be somebody who was trying to become their Olympic coach. And so he was actually coaching. Yeah, kind of wild, huh? And so he actually had 2 people who were going to be trying out for their Olympic team. And they were much older than I was, because I was only 10 and 11. And he said, well, you can watch them train. And I was like, okay. So he actually would pick me up at 4:30 in the morning. I remember we listened to the story, the song, Rich Girl, You Gone Too Far. And so it's like an older song now, right? But the thing is, he used to pick me up at 4:30, and my brother sometimes would go with. I had 2 older brothers, and my one brother continued swimming and ended up becoming a cross-country runner. And sometimes he would pick us up, and so we would actually go watch these people train and mainly do their weights and their strength work. And then I'd actually be able to get in the water with them for a little bit. But I just idolized these people, and they were so nice to me that I just thought, I want to be like them. And so when they actually, like a few years later, I was back in the United States, and I got to watch them actually compete on the Olympics on TV. And I just thought, wow, this is so neat. I want to be able to do this myself.
Well, so what are the characteristics? For example, you saw them training, and you saw clearly there's a difference. How does it click with you to say, hey, they're really actually going to something, even though they're going for the Olympics, that this is really bigger than life? This is something that, my gosh, if you win this, you're just really acknowledged across the world, not just in this town or whatever. How did that feel that you kind of catch up with them or propel yourself on the equal level with them at that time in training?
It's funny, I think I realized because they treated me so nicely and I felt so welcomed into the group, I guess I never really saw them as so different than me. I knew they were older and better athletes than me. I just sort of assumed, hey, I can be like that. And I think sometimes it's funny that you ask this because my husband and I actually work with athletes. We have a business called We Coach For You. And a lot of people sometimes think, I'm not as good as Johnny or Michelle out there. And instead, in my book, in my book, Be Your Best Without the Stress, I share stories about this and also ways for people to realize that, hey, embrace your inner Olympian. You can have your Olympic moment too. And I think it's important to realize that, and I realized this as time went on, honestly, is that we all are human beings. We all have dreams, and sometimes it gets squashed, and there's other times where we also get really stuck in our fears. And this is the case, too, for anybody who will be competing this summer in the Olympic Games in London, is that they also have their moments of doubt. They also have their moments of, oh, my gosh, do I belong here? Or can I do this of what I'm setting out to do here? And I think when the difference is realizing that we can overcome our obstacles and how do we reframe what's going on for us in our world so that we can stay focused and knowing that we have people out there who will help us if we allow them to.
Wow. These people actually you compete with, and they're going to be competing with period of time. What is the life of, not the day-to-day life, but what's the life of the longevity of a person who's going to be training for the Olympics? How long does it take to train, and how many competitions they're actually going to compete against over time? Is it a 10-year period, or is it maybe 3 games over time, or what is the life cycle?
Yeah, very good question. I guess it's interesting. Nowadays, it's very different than it was even just 10 years ago or 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there was no sponsorships. We weren't allowed to be able to have money coming to us, especially if you wanted to do college sports. And basically, if you took money, that was it. You would never be able to compete again in the Olympics. And so basically in the 80s and 90s, a lot of people maybe did 1 or 2 Olympic Games at the most. And what people probably don't realize is that it's rare for people to make so many Olympic teams. Most of the time, people are done. And in the end, very few people can keep making it also because of age. And so most people, kind of like anything, it takes about 8 to 10 years of intense, focused training to even get close to being at the top. So for me, at age 7 or 8 is when I started swimming. And then by the time I actually was fortunate, or however you want to look at it, at age 14, I was actually already on the U.S. national team. And I swam on the U.S. national team for 7 years till the age of 21. And basically, most people that's very young. I was actually the youngest U.S. national team member when I was 14. But then again, nowadays you'll see people like Natalie Cogg in the summer. She'll be swimming. She's 29. Michael Phelps is about that age. And it's rare to have people swimming beyond that. And because at that point, the body does actually need more recovery time. And so you also asked too, like in terms of my career, I actually ended up my dad was transferred to Australia. We lived there for a year. And then later he was transferred to Pennsylvania. So from 8th through 12th grade, I actually attended a prep school at Germantown Academy and swam with an Olympic coach his name is Richard Schulberg. And we actually, he ended up developing many other Olympians throughout the years that span from 1980 all the way till now. In fact, Olympic trials for swimming are in 2 weeks, and he has 2 people who will hopefully make the team yet.
Wow. It's really amazing. If you look at the day-to-day life, because how can a person afford to just train? If there's some stipend or some sponsor that can sponsor a person, but if a person, I guess as a child it's a lot easier, but when you get to a certain point, how can you afford to just take off that amount of time to train to get ready for Olympics?
Yes, no, I hear you. It's interesting because I think what most people probably don't realize is that there's very few people who actually make enough money in the Olympic sports. And so obviously Michael Phelps is worth a lot of money, but he's rare. And most people, like even Jason Lezak, who anchored the 4x100 freestyle relay that was infamous in 2008, his amazing swim he had, and he was all over the TV. He had a hard time getting sponsors after that because it was Michael Phelps basically was the guy in 2008. And so it's amazing. Even somebody who is that good, wins gold medals at the Olympics, still might have a hard time collecting and receiving enough money to train. And so what happens is a lot of athletes do clinics for clubs or for youth. And sometimes if they're lucky, they get sponsored by, obviously for swimming, there's some swimwear that people get sponsored by, like Speedo, Arena, and Tier. And also there's corporations that sometimes will donate. I know also when Shawn Johnson, the gymnast, made it in 2008, she was actually supported a lot by her team, people in the community in Iowa. And so it's varied. Everybody has their own story. I know for me, after I was actually in the summertime between college, I actually went back. My club team in Pennsylvania, we trained with, we had a 50-meter pool that we used on John DuPont's estate. And we actually trained there, and I was actually able to live there for a while to be able to train. And so it depends. Everybody has their own story about what they end up doing to be able to afford to be able to keep living their dream. And sometimes people have to give it up because they just can't financially make it work. But in the end, I think a lot of people do have a way of, especially when your dream is important enough to you, you find a way. Sometimes people work jobs. Sometimes they save up money for a while and then go back to their sport.
Okay. We're going to take a break real quick. We'll be back with Katrina and probably within less than a minute. Be back in a moment.
You're listening to the Core Business Show, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. Apple Capital Group in Jacksonville, Florida, is a commercial lender that specializes in asset-based loans, equipment leasing and financing, invoice financing, commercial real estate loans, and asset-based financing in the U.S. and Canada. Apple Capital Group is a direct lender that lends on their private equity investment portfolio. 90% of most loans are decided within 2 hours, and vendor funding within 24 hours after documents are completed, with a one-page application. No slow no's, just a quick decision and a fast yes. To get more information about lending from Apple Capital Group, call 866-611-7457. That's 866-611-7457 to speak with one of our loan specialists. Or visit us right now at applecapitalgroup.com. Welcome back to the Core. Once again, here's Tim Jacquet.
We're back with Katrina Radke. She's an Olympic gold medalist, and we're going to talk about her book in a moment. Katrina, to talk about a person in the public eye, kind of tell us, now you're in the public eye, you won a medal. What is it like?
What is it like? Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. What is it like, and do you really have to really fear for certain things, or you can't do certain things anymore because the expectation has changed?
Well, it's interesting because I think for many years, for me, I ended up being part of this group where we were in the public eye, and yet at the same time, we were just doing our thing. And so you don't even really realize that you're in the public eye. I mean, it's not like I'm Brad Pitt or somebody like that, or Angelina Jolie, who's just mobbed by paparazzi, that's for sure. But the thing is, Yeah, I remember I came back. For me, I was actually coming back after the Olympics. And the Olympics, obviously, compared to any other competition that I did, because I did World Championships and World Cups and Pan Pacific Games and other meets that were international, they're just not as well known in the public eye. But yet in the swimming world, they're very big. And so after the Olympics, I actually was a senior in high school. And I came back, and our school was actually a place where they had K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade. And so a lot of people all of a sudden saw me differently, even though I was still the same person. And I felt like, geez, here I am. I'm still Katrina Radke. I'm still the same person you knew 6 months ago. I just happen now to be Olympian, and I've won international medals. But the point is, I'm still who I am. And I think in our society, we get so caught up in defining people by their successes or their lack of successes or what their roles and titles are. And I go into my book and Be Your Best Without the Stress. I share this because people to realize that, hey, you're okay just as you are, no matter what your title is or no matter whether or not you got the medal. And I think it's important to remember this message, because so often we're told we're never good enough unless we do these things. And so I had to learn that these people are looking up to me or what I did, and yet they needed to realize their own power within inside themselves. And so I did talks and talked to people. I wanted them to know that I remember my first experience when I first met my first Olympic gold medalist. I was about 10 or 12 years old, and I just looked up to them and just thought they were the most amazing gift to the whole world. And in the end, I realized that, wow, hey, you know what? They put their pants on the same way I do in the morning. And it's okay. I mean, it's like, you don't know. You may think that they took this small little steps climbing up the mountain just like anybody else does who becomes great in any endeavor that they choose to do in their life. And for me, that's what I had done. And so I try to instill that in other people to realize, hey, you can do your goals too. You just have to take one step at a time. Show up. Half the battle is just showing up. So I guess in terms of public eye, fortunately, it's not like I've been bombarded. And at the same time, I've appreciated my role in terms of inspiring others. And by looking at it that way, it hasn't been overwhelming or it hasn't felt like a burden. It's been more like, hey, I can be myself. I'm human too. I can make my mistakes, and people can learn from them too. And yeah, also be inspired by the things I've done that are very inspiring.
Wow. What is like really when you go through all this training and competition, and then finally you have a gold medal? What is it like all of a sudden when they announce your name, and what goes through your mind? What goes through your mind when they put the medal around your neck?
Yeah, so I remember the first time I got a gold medal internationally was when I was 14, and I thought, wow, here I am hearing the national anthem playing for me and being in a place where I'm there with my teammates, because I was actually on a relay, and we had just broken the American record, and I thought, this is amazing. And yet at the same time, I didn't totally take it in for several years later. I was in a place where I didn't really realize how amazing it was, because I just sort of thought, well, here I am. I've been getting to this level, and you're sort of surrounded by it, and your friends are getting their medals, and you just sort of assume that this is part of the process. And yet at the same time, of course, it's also a culmination of something that you've been striving and reaching for many years. And so the Olympics, I actually did not receive a medal. I got 5th place in the Olympics. I got gold medals at several other international competitions. But as I mentioned to you earlier, the East Germans were actually on steroids at my Olympics. And so they were 1st and 2nd in my event. And the actual world record holder got 3rd, and I was 5th. And so the joke of it is, someday I might actually receive a bronze medal from the Olympics, because the International Olympic Committee knows, and everybody knows, the East Germans were on steroids. But the fact of the matter is, by the time I'm 90 with grandchildren, I don't know if it will really even matter. So, but yes, in terms of other competitions where I did win, it is a beautiful thing to be able to watch your flag go up, knowing you're representing your country, and being in a place where you go, yes, wow, here I am, and I just had this great, amazing.
Wow. Tell us about, after you transition all of that, you all of a sudden got inspired to write a book. Tell us about how that course took.
Yes. Well, so basically, my book, Be Your Best Without the Stress, was probably many years in the working. For me, my swimming career ended because I ended up very sick. And so I had competed with mononucleosis for many years, and then I kind of thought I had recovered, but then I had a debilitating chronic illness called chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, and some people know it as Epstein-Barr virus. And my organs were all inflamed, my body was shutting down, and my body was in a position where it was basically starting to scream at me because I wasn't listening to it. I was pretending like everything was fine. I was justifying that, hey, I'm still going overseas to other competitions and doing really well, and so I must be okay. And in the end, I was just afraid to stop. I was afraid of not having this thing that I love to do. And so during that time, I knew I was going to have to write a book about this because over the years, I've had people come to me and say, Katrina, I need to talk to you because my athlete has this, or an athlete would call me and they'd be afraid to quit too because maybe they were overtrained, or maybe they had burned their candle at both ends, or they just were afraid to stop. And really what they needed to do was take a little break and let their body rejuvenate to be able to then train again. And so what happens is during that time, I thought, geez, and I'd always kept a journal since I was like in third grade. And so during that time, I just thought, okay, I know I'm going to have to write something, but I'm not sure I'm willing to share my whole story as well as tools for other people to use yet. I feel like I'm still doing my own process. I was somebody who never would cry. I was always in a place where I had a lot of pride. And so I went through my own therapy. I went through my own place where I learned to be okay with the fact that I had gotten really sick and I had to stop swimming. But during that time, too, I also went to grad school and became a therapist. And also I teach college sports psychology. And so the last 5 years or so, I knew I was getting ready to write. And last year, I had kind of created a curriculum for a lot of material, but I really, when I got intensely focused and went up to a retreat place and just got immersed in just writing and sleeping and meditating and eating and just wrote my book. And I think it's a great story of my own, of anybody out there who has a big dream, and also shares many tools to help people to take the steps of how do you actually go after and create your dream life? How do you actually manage obstacles that we all deal with in life? We all deal with adversity, whether it's our health or whether it's stressors or distractions or injury. How do we take care of ourselves emotionally and physically? How do we eat with nutrition? How do we take care of our bodies through exercise? How about spiritually or within relationships? And so all of that really leads to maximizing our potential because they're all related to helping us feel deeply satisfied within. And when we can be in a place where we realize what is it that we're truly seeking, what really motivates us inside, and from there we can find our true self. We can be in a place where we're maximizing who we really want to be in this lifetime.
Wow. Do you see there's a lot of stress and pressure of being an athlete today versus past?
I think the stress and expectations are the same in some ways, but different because sponsorships is a whole new ballgame compared to 20 years ago. But because they have expectations in terms of having to meet the requirements needed to have the sponsorship. But I think in terms of expectations, I think one thing to consider is that yes, the Olympics seems like this big pressure cooked competition. But for swimming in the United States, ironically, many people even comment, many people who are world record holders will even say, gosh, the Olympic trials are more pressure cooked than any of the other competitions. Because just to make the Olympic team is almost more stressful than actually being at the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games is just, all the competitions they're just like you're going to another pool. Oftentimes you race the same people. So in that respect, it's the expectations you have on yourself are probably what's stressing you out the most if you have something that's stressing you out. And so it's a matter of having to remind yourself of, hey, you know what? It's not just another pool. It's just another meet. I'm getting up on the block, put my goggles on for swimming. Other sports have their own stuff they get ready for. And to remember that, in that way, it's easier to stay focused on giving your best and not getting caught up in, oh my gosh, what if I don't? Or what if I do? Or what are the ramifications of the outcome of this? And I think it's more important to realize that the more you stay present with what you can do and that you know you're going to give your best, that's all you have to think about. And the rest will take care of itself. If you've been setting your intentions and imagining what you want to create for yourself over the months as you train, the actual final meet or competition is really fun. It can be really fun. And it's a matter, everybody's different on that, obviously. Some people get very stressed out and some people can take it in stride. And I don't know if you watched the U.S. Open the last few days at all, but it's fun when you think about some of the people like Jack Nicklaus and some other people who have played. It's kind of like you're getting on your game. You get out there and you're in your own little power and you're in your state and you're there with your buddies and some people you may not enjoy competing against, and yet they bring out the best in you. And that's really what competition is about, is getting to that moment where everything jives together and you feel like, for me, like the water carries me. And I don't have to even do anything. It's almost like somebody's doing it for me.
Wow. What is the pressure in winning? Is it a lot of pressure? Do you win at all cost?
No, I don't. But,
no, you don't, but I think some people.
There are people who have cheated, obviously, in the past to do whatever they can. And, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned to you, in my day, unfortunately, the East Germans, the government really had their own need to want to be successful. And so a lot of times the athletes did not even know that they were on steroids. They were told they were giving nutritional supplements, and that's what they were told to do. And I think back in my day, I know we knew that they were doing something, but we didn't really know what. And I was naive about what that really meant to be on steroids. And so we were just told that we could beat them and race them and not really think twice about it. And I think that's where I think the majority of people don't win at all costs. Most people are there to want to see what's possible, knowing it's a fair playing field. And I know for me, looking back, I know, like, for example, imagine this, 1980, there was no Olympics for the United States because we boycotted. In 1984, the Russians and East Germans were not there. And so people I have friends of mine who were in the 84 Olympics, for example, who may have won, but they don't feel like they wanted to still compete against the whole world, not just the ones who were at the Olympic Games that year. And so I think when people are really honest with themselves, they know they'd rather compete against the best of the best with everybody being clean.
Oh.
And I think that's where, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, basically, I think in the end, we all feel better when you from that place, obviously, versus how are you going to really feel good about yourself if you actually had to cheat?
Well, what are your thoughts about, of course, I'm not sure much about enhancing drugs today. And for example, doping, I think Armstrong was accused of with the committee. Do you know anything about doping? And I mean, they just literally take all the blood from your body, a certain portion of it, and just oxygen.
Oops, I lost you there a little bit. Are you there?
Is that visible signs that a person can see that, hey, you got a needle mark in your arm that doesn't look right? Or they think you're just taking blood? You only can do that so much.
Yes. Well, basically for cycling, it's a very different sport. A lot of people, it's rumored, if you will, because I'm obviously not there to say for sure, but a lot of them do blood doping to actually increase the oxygen into the blood cells. And so therefore, so EPO is a very common one that's talked about. And every sport is different. Some athletes I know in track and field or even some swimmers have actually used steroids or human growth hormone. And it's been known that people have been on stuff. And of course, in the United States, it's called USADA, United States Anti-Doping Association. It's the agency. It's actually, and then there's a WADA, which is the world version of that, where people actually get blood. Initially, it's actually just, from my day, you only had to go to the bathroom and they'd actually be watching you and you'd have to pee into a cup and people would actually test your urine to make sure that there's no tainted substances in it. Nowadays, actually, people get blood tested. And they just started that a few years ago. And so, but, there's always people who can be ahead of the system, and so they know how to beat the system. It's kind of like going through airport security, of course. Well, obviously, people still got through the bombs. So
absolutely.
It's kind of like this. Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing. And so, yes, in terms of people who are exercise physiologists, they can look at somebody and know they're cheating. So if you look at a female, for example, who's on steroids, you'll be able to see it. Like their body gets really ripped, and they almost get very aggressive, and they'll be able to perform beyond what is normal for that age or what's normal for that sex. And you can kind of tell what happens to their bodies if you were to look at pictures. So yes, I mean, you can also see it when they're racing, and they just very rarely can people keep performing at a certain high level. I mean, everybody has, when you're peaking in training, your body does break down even if you're 15 years old. And so to be able to unless you're on some drugs, it's very rare for any top athlete to be able to maintain a continual improved time or performance. Usually you have a little downtime as you're training heavily, and then as you rest, you have your peak, and that's when you have your best performances. So, yeah, there's a very interesting conversation on that one, because I think we're going to probably see more of it as people are shedding light on people who have cheated in the past.
And lastly, I guess as we close out and talk more about your career and your life, and kind of tell us towards the end of the book, the whole scenario that you're trying to get the readers to understand.
Yes, so the main message of Be Your Best Without the Stress is be yourself. Find your truth, know what drives you, and create and live your dreams. So oftentimes we get caught up in needing to try and live somebody else's life or trying to be somebody that we're really not. So let's say I'm supposed to be an artist, and meanwhile, maybe my parents put the pressure on me to be a doctor, but yet that's not my path. And if I try to be on that path, my spirit's going to get shoved down, and I'm going to feel I won't feel satisfied, I won't feel happy inside, and yet I might do this out of loyalty, but in the end, if I can't be true to who I am, I won't be able to fulfill what I'm here to do also. And so be okay with who you are in your life up to now. Accept and forgive past mistakes that you've made or others have made or what you've done to others, and be willing to create what you want too. You know, we're all going to get stuck, and I lay out steps in my book to get unstuck, and I also lay out steps to take care of yourself while you're pursuing your success. And I think the biggest thing is to stay focused on finding out what motivates you, realizing your power and claiming it fully, and staying focused on your center as you live in the direction of your dreams, because from there, your life can be a masterpiece. The magic shows up, and you're in a place where you can find your peace and fulfillment within.
Perfect. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'm married, and I have 2 little kids, and I love watching them grow up.
Oh.
And I love I know, they're so fun. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and my son has just turned 5, and they're a bundle of love and energy. And so, but I also, my true love is I see myself speaking all over the world and doing workshops and helping other people find out what really makes them feel good inside and live from there. And I look forward to working with other people as I continue to do that.
Wow.
And I may make a movie.
There you go. What advice would you have a person who wants to become an Olympian coming up?
Go after your dreams and be willing to take one step at a time, and realize that it's not going to happen overnight if you're just getting started, but to realize that you can. And all you have to do is take one step at a time and show up.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. And also your website address if they wanted to reach out to you or take a look at your books. Go ahead.
Yep. My website is KatrinaRadke.com. That's KatrinaRadke.com. And you can purchase my book there underneath the store. And if people have any questions, feel free to contact me through my website, and I look forward to hearing from people.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show, Katrina.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Okay, great. Have a great day. Take care.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye. Again, this has been another production of the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. You can download this episode on iTunes or Blog Talk Radio. Everybody, thank you for listening. We do ask you to go into iTunes and write reviews about the shows. I mean, we got a lot of hits, a lot of episodes have been downloaded. Go ahead and write comments about them so we know what we need to do to make things better. And if you have any suggestions on more shows, topics, send an email to info@Apple Capital Group, our sponsor, and we will be more than happy to consider the shows for the next following month. Everybody take care and have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet.
Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For a free quote on equipment leasing and financing, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. And fill out the information to receive your free quote. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the Core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. Thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.